3D designing can seem really overwhelming. When I got my printer, I would just find designs online that people were posting and just print them. Sometimes they would fit my use case, sometimes they would not. I didn't know how to customize them for my own use case. So I went through a whole journey of what's the best CAD tools, what are paid, what are free, are these even good for what I'm trying to do? There's a lot of options between your Fusion 360, SolidWorks, Tinkercad, Shapr3D, Onshape, and others that I probably don't even know about. After a bunch of research, the first one that I landed on, and I recommend anyone whoever asks me this question, is start using Tinkercad. It is totally free, it's really simple to use, still has a steep learning curve, but you can figure it out pretty easily if you do their learning course that they provide. So they'll have really simple tutorials like instructions on the left, make a rectangular box and cut a hole in it. They will actually show you step by step how that works. If you go through those, you will get a really good hang of how designing and cutting pieces out of shapes work. Like I've talked before, if you do project-based learning, you'll have these projects that you want to build, like a thing you want to have on your bedside where you keep a book, pen, and a chapstick. You may have these little things that you want to solve for. And when you have an idea like that, you'll start thinking in terms of how in Tinkercad you have a shape, how I'm going to cut a hole through in a big rectangle, make a smaller rectangle, cut a hole, that's where I'll hold my book. A lot of these things will start to make sense the more you use Tinkercad and do the learning part and just make a lot of these kind of projects over and over again. Now, yes, you can go ahead and learn Fusion 360, and that's what a lot of people do. They have a free plan for personal use, and that would be fantastic. But the only challenge that I had with Fusion 360 is I found YouTube tutorials that were learn Fusion 360 in 30 days, and that just looked very complicated. Doing the sketches and then getting shapes out of them, that is the way that most people learn. But if all you want to do is just solve for things around your house and you just want to casually design stuff, Tinkercad actually works super well. You can get down to 0.1 millimeter accuracy, if not more, and it is totally free. They also have an iPad app that works super well, and it's actually super fluid. On my 10th generation iPad, which is not the Pro, it works super well on there too. But a few weeks ago, I hit a wall. I was trying to make modifications to this existing design that was an adapter for a camera lens for the iPhone. The cameras are pretty small, and it would go on top of it. Screwing something on top means you need to get into the design, get the tolerances right, and this was really small. Now, the issue with that is when you go in Tinkercad and I was exporting the design file, it would not get designs correct. When you would export it, imagine going from a 1080p video into a 240p video. It would destroy the entire quality of the whole design. Printing that would look like you went from playing Call of Duty to playing the first version of Doom on your PC. That's how drastic the quality goes down when you're working on very minor, small things, and that has a lot of details. And for all the hours that I spent trying to figure out a way to keep all of those details, there was just none. So that is what prompted me into finding a actual tool that does not compress the files that badly. So I went back to Fusion 360, which I had installed a long time ago, but found too complicated to use. It was not native to the Mac ecosystem. So every time I installed Fusion 360, it felt like they took a Windows working application, worked on somehow porting it over to a Mac, and 10 years ago that they did that, it has stuck in the same exact way and it has not changed. It does not feel like a native app. It is a little slow. I have a MacBook M1 Pro. It should ideally work really good, but it just feels really sluggish, and sometimes installing it, uninstalling it feels like 15 years ago. I tried to look at SolidWorks, did not really have a Mac app, I don't believe. There was an online version, couldn't really get to it. Onshape actually has a free version, and you can use all of its features, but every design you make gets public. If you don't care about that, it seems like a really good tool, but I wanted to start designing for stuff that I can actually produce and sell, and that would include a final printed part and the design files, and I just didn't want the design files that I've worked hours and weeks and months on to be public at all times. So then I stumbled upon Shapr3D. Shapr3D is a native application for any platform that you're designing on. It goes everything from a Mac OS to iPad OS to Windows, and it is available in all of those stores. Now, Shapr3D does have a free version, and you can use all those features, but I believe you can only have 2 design files, and when you're exporting, you cannot use the high quality export. That does not solve the problem that I had with Tinkercad of not being able to export it in high quality. So to solve all of my problems not using Fusion 360 because of it just doesn't feel native, has performance issues, and Tinkercad doesn't have the best exporting ability. Shapr3D has all of that, it's just behind a paywall. So that's when I upgraded to actually using Shapr3D. It even has a Vision OS app. I thought it would work with my Vision Pro, but it does not. And I think there's an enterprise license where once you design something and you want to see it in real life, you can put the Vision Pro on and see the 3D model in front of you with the real shape of what the design will actually look like. You can iterate with it as you make changes on the design on your Mac or something. You can see it change real life on that model. And I found that really, really cool. But it is only available if you're on an enterprise plan and you work at a company and you want those kind of features. So that was a bummer. In my weeks of working and trying to learn this tool, iPad app works so much better with a Apple Pencil and designing those little intricate details than working on the Mac with a keyboard and mouse. Keyboard and mouse worked fine for me when I was doing Tinkercad, and it was actually much faster than the iPad. But for some reason, Shapr3D, the iPad app, even on a 10th gen iPad, it works really well. Sometimes I think the RAM runs out, so selecting a large object with a lot of details takes like 1 or 2 seconds to load, the screen goes gray. But after that, it works super well. Now, if upgrading to Shapr3D seems like too big of a hassle, Fusion 360 still works really well for most people. No tool is really perfect. Most people still use Fusion 360, and that seems to work well. A lot more people are working towards Onshape. All you need is a web browser, and it works perfectly on there. But for projects that require a lot more processing power, I usually prefer using a native app because those can be optimized to work really well. And on a browser, you have different keyboard shortcuts, and that just doesn't work too well when you're constantly using different tools to design something. And throughout this whole process of me trying to learn Shapr3D, one of the really good things about them that I liked is when I was starting to design the thing for the first time, you have to create a sketch, a 2D sketch, and then you can use a 2D sketch and then make it 3D by extracting the layer and make it like have a height for it. And what happens is anytime you use a new feature of it, it pops up like this little video on top where you can tap it and it shows like a 20-30 second video where it shows you how that feature works. So it will show you how to create like a little curve. It will show you how to like subtract a circle from a rectangle. All of those things would just pop up as soon as you click on any of those tools inside the app. I think that was really helpful because I didn't have to have a YouTube video on the side trying to figure out how that person is doing it. It would just show up as I was working through the tools. And the more I watched those videos, the better I got. It is still very new to me, but if I see a quick problem, like our blinds were broken and all I had to do was design something very quickly where it would just slide on top of them and I could epoxy them and then keep them stuck together because I didn't have clamps. It took me about 15 minutes and 3 design iterations. I was able to design something that would go straight onto the blinds. I could epoxy it and keep it stuck together with that quick design I made in Shapr3D. I hope this was valuable. If you use any tools that I haven't mentioned that may suit better for some people that these tools do not cover, please let me know that in the comments. I hope this was useful. And until next time, peace.